The sleek, black hull of the Centauri flagship pierced through the void of space, a silent predator among stars. Ambassador Velker stood at the viewport, his scales shifting a shade darker, betraying the unease simmering beneath his composed exterior. Below him, Earth's fleet lay in silent formation, silent but imposing. Rows upon rows of gleaming, angular ships hovered in perfect order, their surfaces reflecting starlight in sharp, cold glimmers. It was not what Velker had expected. "Ambassador, this can't be right," muttered Zyros, his young aide. His eyes flicked nervously between Velker and the imposing view outside. "The humans are supposed to be primitive. This fleet, it's more advanced than anticipated," Velker finished grimly. His talons lightly clicked against the control panel, a rare sign of anxiety for a Centauri of his rank. "They have been hiding their capabilities." Zyros swallowed audibly, his hands shaking as he typed furiously into the data pad. "The Galactic Council's records, none of this was mentioned. They said humans were barely past planetary exploration. What if they've been deceiving us all along?" Velka's thoughts swirled. Deception wasn't uncommon in galactic diplomacy, but for a young species like humanity to conceal such military prowess was troubling. He had come to size up Earth before finalizing the treaty that would officially place humanity under the Centauri's protective arm, an arrangement that would give his species considerable influence. But now, Velka wasn't so sure if the Centauri were the ones in control. "We'll find out soon enough," he said, voice tightening with resolve. "Prepare for communication with their commander. We need to know just how deep this runs." The human ships began to shift. Silent engines moved them into tighter formation, their patterns so precise it bordered on artistry. The tension in Velker's chest grew sharper. As the comms activated, a human face appeared on the screen. Captain Lorne sat calmly, his features betraying no sign of concern. Dark eyes met Velker's unblinking gaze, and for a moment neither spoke. The weight of centuries of diplomacy pressed down on Velker's shoulders, but Lorne's steady presence unnerved him more than he cared to admit. "Ambassador Velker," Lorne said evenly, his voice steady, "I trust your journey was peaceful?" Velker nodded slowly, scanning the human's face for any hint of arrogance. He found none. "It has been informative, Captain. Your fleet is impressive. More so than our records suggested." A faint smile crossed Lorne's lips. "We've made progress." Progress. That word hung between them, thick with unspoken meaning. Velker's talons tapped lightly again. "I wonder if we've underestimated your species, Captain. This fleet is for defense." Lorne cut in smoothly, his tone calm but unyielding. "Earth has no interest in conquest, Ambassador. But we are not as defenseless as the galaxy might believe." Velker's pulse quickened. This was not the conversation he had intended. He had come to Earth expecting compliance, an eager partnership that would bolster the Centauri's power. But the quiet confidence in Lorne's voice, so calm, so assured, told him that humanity had no intention of being anyone's puppet. "We are here to assess your readiness for the treaty," Velker pressed, his voice taking on a more authoritative edge. "The Centauri offer protection, resources. And what does Earth offer in return?" Lorne's voice was cool, measured. "Our fleet stands ready to defend our interests, Ambassador. The question is, do we need protection, or do we offer it?" Velker's throat tightened. It was a subtle challenge, one that could unravel everything if handled poorly. His talons stopped their rhythmic clicking, and his scales darkened further. The realization hit him: humanity was not asking for aid. They were negotiating from a position of strength. Before Velker could respond, the human fleet shifted again, their ships drawing even closer, their movements deliberate and synchronized, like an unspoken threat. "Captain," Velker said slowly, "perhaps we should reconsider the terms." Lorne's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps we should." The transmission ended, leaving Velker staring at the now dark screen. His heart raced. What had seemed like a routine diplomatic mission was quickly spiraling into something far more dangerous. "We need to report back to the Council," Zyros whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship. "The humans, They're stronger than we thought. Velker nodded, but his mind raced ahead, grappling with the implications of what he had seen. The Zentari had thought they were coming to secure a new ally. Now, Velker feared they had stumbled upon a far greater power. Strong, Velker murmured to himself, his voice filled with a newfound respect and fear. But how strong? As the fleet outside moved in eerie precision, Velker knew one thing: the Zentari would have to tread carefully. Earth was not to be underestimated. The tension from the previous encounter lingered in the air as the Zentari flagship sailed through the darkness. Velker stood before the council chamber's holographic display, his mind racing. The council back home would expect answers. Answers he didn't have, not yet. But the unsettling realization gnawed at him: humanity was hiding far more than advanced ships. They were holding something back, and Velker needed to understand what before the Zentari made any hasty decisions. Ambassador, the report is ready for transmission, Zyros announced, stepping into the chamber. The young aide had regained some of his composure, though his eyes still betrayed lingering anxiety. Good, Velker replied, his voice heavy. His talons tapped the armrest of his chair in quick, agitated clicks. Send it. But keep it vague. Zyros blinked, confused. Vague, sir? Velker turned to face him fully, his sharp gaze locking onto Zyros. Do not send any details about the human fleet. Not yet. The aide's brow furrowed. But the council will want. The council wants certainty. Velker interrupted, his tone clipped. And we don't have that. Not yet. We must approach this with caution. Zyros hesitated, clearly troubled by the idea of withholding information. What are we afraid of, Ambassador? The humans can have built all this without attracting attention. Velker's mouth twitched into a grim smile. You forget, Zyros, the galaxy often underestimates new species. We may have overlooked them for too long. And now, they've developed under our noses. As Zyros turned to execute the order, Velker's mind raced. What else had they missed? Earth had remained so unassuming in all council reports. Was it by design, or sheer luck? His thoughts were interrupted by the hum of the comms opening. Ambassador Velker. Captain Lorne's voice came through crisp and clear. I believe we have more to discuss. Velker straightened, bracing himself for another round of veiled threats. The human's calmness in the first meeting had unnerved him. That calmness was back now, like a predator waiting patiently for its prey to make the first mistake. I trust you understand the gravity of your situation, Lorne continued, his tone neutral but with an edge of certainty. Earth isn't looking for enemies, Ambassador. But we also won't be anyone's vassal. Velker's talons dug lightly into the metal of his chair, leaving faint scratches. Our intention was never to subjugate your people, Captain. We offer peace, protection, and unity within the Galactic Council. And yet, Lorne replied coolly, it seems the Zentari's idea of protection comes with strings attached. Strings that we're not inclined to accept. The words hung in the air, unspoken implications clear. The Zentari had a reputation for protection that bordered on domination, and Velker knew Earth wouldn't be willing to fall in line. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. They hadn't been negotiating with an inferior species. They'd been challenging equals. The Council will want guarantees, Velker said, opting for a more cautious approach. Humanity is still new to galactic politics. There are expectations. Lorne's eyes narrowed slightly on the screen. Expectations? You mean compliance? Velker's mouth dried. How had this gone so wrong? The Zentari usually had the upper hand in such discussions, leveraging their technology and influence to steer younger species into submission. But here, standing toe-to-toe with a fleet that rivaled their own, the usual tactics fell flat. I believe we both have something to gain from cooperation, Velker countered, trying to regain control of the conversation. Earth's advancements are impressive. The Council will respect your strength. Lorne's lips twitched into a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure they will. But respect is earned, not demanded. A sharp beeping interrupted them. Zyros hurried over to the control panel, tapping it urgently. His eyes went wide as data scrolled across the screen. Ambassador, we're detecting multiple energy signatures, closing in fast. Velker shot up from his chair, his scales rippling with alarm. From where? Zyro's fingers flew over the console. I don't know. They appeared out of nowhere. No known origin points. The screen flickered as Lorne's gaze shifted, clearly reading similar reports on his end. It appears we're not alone, he said, voice calm but edged with steel. Velker's blood ran cold. Something unseen, something far more dangerous, was approaching. And neither the Zentari nor the humans had anticipated it. Lorne's face darkened as the comms crackled. Ambassador, I suggest we table our discussion for now. Whatever is out there, it's not friendly. Velker's claws gripped the control panel as he watched the energy signatures drawing closer on the screen, their patterns erratic and impossible to predict. The scent of ozone filled the air as the ship's shields powered up, a low hum vibrating through the floor. His instincts screamed danger. Zyro's voice was barely a whisper. Ambassador, what do we do? Velker's answer was immediate, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at his gut. We defend ourselves. But we do it together. The screen blinked as Lorne's ships began shifting into a new formation, their engines roaring to life. For the first time, Velker felt a flicker of hope. The humans weren't enemies. They were potential allies in a far greater battle. As the unknown threat approached, the Zentari and humans stood side by side, prepared to face whatever the void had unleashed. The Zentari warship's interior buzzed with an uneasy hum as the crews scrambled to their battle stations. Velker felt the weight of the situation press down on him. This was not a conflict they had foreseen. His sharp talons tapped a steady rhythm against the cold metal of the command console, his mind racing to grasp the full extent of the danger. The mysterious energy signatures were closing in, and they had little time to prepare. We can't fight what we can't see, Zyros muttered beside him, the glow of his console casting harsh shadows across his strained face. Velker glanced at the tactical readout, nothing but flickering signals, erratic and elusive. We won't fight blind. Get a full scan. Now. The crew worked frantically, but the readings remained scrambled. Whatever was approaching them was cloaked in a way even the Zentari's advanced sensors couldn't decipher. Captain Lorne? Velker's voice cut through the tension, reopening the channel to the human ship. Have your scanners picked up anything tangible? Lorne's face appeared on the holodisplay, the same calm mask he'd worn during their negotiations still firmly in place. But his eyes flickered with something Velker couldn't place. Anticipation? Fear? Perhaps both. Not much, Lorne replied evenly. But we're detecting some kind of distortion field. It's throwing off all standard readings. My engineers are working on a countermeasure. A distortion field? Velker's mind raced, trying to piece together what kind of technology could render both Zentari and human ships nearly blind in the void. Whoever, or whatever, was out there had capabilities beyond anything they'd encountered. Lorne's voice brought him back. We'll hold position until we can get a clearer read on what we're facing. But Ambassador, I suggest you ready your fleet for a worst-case scenario. Velker didn't need the warning. His instincts had been screaming that very thing since the unknown signals first appeared. Understood, Captain? Zentari's shields are at full power, and our weapons are armed. As the comms cut out, the ship's lighting dimmed slightly, a prelude to the energy-intensive battle mode. Velker took a deep breath, pushing down the rising tide of dread. This was beyond politics, beyond territorial disputes. This was survival. Zyros turned to him, his voice shaking. Ambassador, if these things have technology this advanced, what chance do we have? Velker's eyes hardened. We do what the Zentari have always done. We adapt, we endure. And we never back down. The crew worked in tense silence, each of them aware of the approaching danger. Outside, the vast darkness of space remained deceptively calm, the distant stars twinkling in cold indifference. But Velker knew something was coming, something hidden in the blackness. A sudden tremor rippled through the ship, the sound of shields straining against an unknown force. Velker's claws dug into the armrests as the entire vessel vibrated. What was that? Zyro's fingers flew over the console, his voice tight with alarm. Contact! Unknown projectile, impact minimal, but it's testing our shields. Velker's stomach twisted. Testing. Whatever was out there wasn't launching a full attack, it was gauging their defenses. Learning their weaknesses. They're probing us. Velker growled, his voice low and fierce. They want to see how we'll respond. Another tremor, this one slightly stronger, rattled the ship. The crew's collective tension rose, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Velker straightened in his seat, his mind sharpening with battle instincts honed from decades of warfare. He needed to think clearly. Strategically. Zyro's voice broke through the chaos. Ambassador, the humans are moving. Velker looked up at the tactical display to see the human fleet shifting formation, their ships rearranging into a defensive pattern that radiated precision. Captain Lorne wasn't wasting time. He was preparing for a full-scale assault. Velker's lips curled into a rare smile. So, they aren't just talk after all. A sharp ping echoed through the bridge, and Zyro's eyes widened. Ambassador! We've got a visual! The main screen blinked to life, and Velker's breath caught in his throat. Emerging from the darkness were sleek, obsidian ships, pitch black, their surfaces absorbing the starlight around them. They were unlike any vessels he had ever seen, with jagged, organic shapes that twisted in unnatural angles. They moved silently, like phantoms gliding through space, their presence eerie and predatory. Velker's blood ran cold. These weren't just ships, they were something more, something alive. His gaze flicked to Zyro's, who looked equally horrified. What are they? Zyro's whispered, his voice barely audible. Velker didn't have an answer. He could feel the menace radiating from the approaching fleet, a palpable sense of malevolence. His mind screamed at him to retreat, to flee, but he knew there was no escape from this. Ambassador. Lorne's voice cut through the tension again, his calm veneer finally cracking. We're detecting weapons charging on their end. This is about to get ugly. Velker clenched his jaw, every instinct urging him to strike first. But something held him back, a voice of caution, telling him that this was no ordinary battle. This was something far more dangerous. Hold position, Velker ordered, his voice steady but strained. Let them make the first move. Zyros shot him a panicked look. Ambassador, we can't just wait for. Hold, Velker repeated firmly, his eyes locked on the screen. Whatever these ships were, they had the upper hand in stealth and technology. The Zentari couldn't afford a reckless engagement. Not now. The seconds dragged on, each one filled with unbearable tension. Then, without warning, the enemy's ships opened fire, streams of energy that rippled through space like dark lightning. Velker's heart pounded in his chest. All units, defensive maneuvers! Prepare for full engagement! As the Zentari and human fleets braced for impact, Velker's mind sharpened with cold determination. Whatever this new threat was, it had underestimated them. And he would make sure it regretted that mistake. The bridge of the Zentari flagship was a tense battlefield in its own right. Velker stood at the center, the screens around him ablaze with data and flickering images of the approaching enemy fleet. The alien ships loomed like shadows against the starry backdrop, their dark forms gliding through space with an unsettling silence. Every second they drew closer, the weight of their presence bearing down on the Zentari crew. Velker's sharp eyes flicked to Zyros, who was struggling to keep his composure as his fingers danced over the console. Shields are holding, but if we take another direct hit, we won't last, Velker finished grimly, cutting him off. The enemy wasn't just powerful, they were precise, dissecting their defenses piece by piece. And worst of all, Velker still didn't know what they were up against. Behind him, Captain Lorne's voice came through the comms. Ambassador, my fleet's ready to engage. We'll keep their fire focused on us while you reposition. Velker's instincts screamed against it, but he couldn't deny the tactical necessity. The humans were more mobile, their ships designed for speed and rapid maneuvers. The Zentari vessels, while heavily armored, couldn't pivot as swiftly. Lorne was offering to take the brunt of the first strike, a selfless gamble that both impressed and unsettled Velker. "Understood, Captain," Velker replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil roiling inside him. "But be careful. We still don't know what their full capabilities are." "Trust me," Lorne said, a grim smile flickering across his face in the hollow display. "We've faced worse." The human fleet surged ahead, cutting through the blackness with precision. Velker watched as Lorne's ships formed a defensive perimeter, their hulls gleaming against the cold void. It was a sight to behold, humans moving like a single, unified force, each ship complementing the next in perfect synchronization. Velker couldn't help but feel a begrudging admiration. The humans, despite their smaller numbers, fought like cornered wolves, ferocious, calculating, and unpredictable. A sudden jolt rocked the Centauri flagship, nearly throwing Velker off his feet. "What in the stars? Direct hit!" Zyros shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Their weapons, Ambassador, they're bypassing our shields!" Velker's heart pounded. "Reroute power to hull reinforcement. We can't let them break through." The crew scrambled, the ship's systems groaning under the strain. Velker's claws dug into the armrest as he watched the tactical display. The enemy's ships were no longer just testing them, they were moving in for the kill. Beams of dark energy lanced out from the alien vessels, each strike calculated to exploit a weakness in their defenses. Then, as if by some unseen command, the enemy shifted. Half of their fleet broke formation, angling toward the human ships with terrifying speed. "They're splitting their forces," Zyros observed, his eyes wide. "But why?" "They're going after Lorne," Velker realized, his blood running cold. The humans had drawn the enemy's attention, and now they were paying the price. "Damn it!" His comms crackled to life again. Lorne's voice, calm but urgent, filled the bridge. "Ambassador, we're taking heavy fire. Their weapons, something's interfering with our systems." Velker clenched his jaw. The humans were buying them time, but it was a time they couldn't afford to waste. "Pull back, Lorne. We'll cover you." "No." Lorne's voice was firm, but there was an edge to it. "We're not retreating. If we fall back now, they'll tear you apart. We'll hold them off as long as we can." A cold wave of realization washed over Velker. The humans were prepared to sacrifice themselves to protect the Centauri fleet. It was an act of honor, or madness, but either way, it cut through him like a blade. Velker wasn't used to allies, especially not ones willing to die for him. The seconds ticked by as the human ships engaged the enemy, their small vessels darting through the void like wasps. But even Velker could see the truth, they were outmatched. The enemy's technology was too advanced, their firepower too overwhelming. He slammed his fist against the console. "Damn it, Lorne! Don't throw your lives away!" But there was no time for further argument. The alien ships unleashed a torrent of energy, dark beams that twisted through space, striking the human fleet with unrelenting force. One by one, Lorne's ships buckled under the onslaught, their shields flickering and failing. Velker's heart pounded in his chest, but then, a spark of hope. One of the enemy's ships, the largest of the fleet, wavered for a brief moment. Its movement slowed, its dark energy field flickering. "Ambassador, look!" Zyros pointed at the screen. "They're vulnerable. Whatever that is, it's breaking down." Velker didn't hesitate. "All ships, focus fire on that vessel. Now!" The Centauri fleet, battered and bruised, responded with a single-minded fury. Beams of energy tore through space, converging on the weakened enemy ship. Explosions rippled across its hull as the concentrated fire overwhelmed its defenses. The ship shuddered, its sleek black form splintering under the barrage. And then, in a burst of light, it detonated. The shockwave rocked both fleets, but Velker felt a surge of triumph. They had drawn first blood. The Centauri and human alliance had just proven they could fight back, and win. Lorne's voice crackled through the comms again, hoarse but alive. "Not bad, Ambassador. Not bad at all." Velker allowed himself a grim smile. "We're not done yet, Captain. But it's a start." The remaining enemy ships hesitated, their predatory movements slowing as if reconsidering the fight. But Velka knew this was only the beginning. The real battle was far from over. As the enemy ships regrouped, Velka steeled himself for the next wave. The Zentari had tasted victory, but the danger still loomed large. Whatever these creatures were, they wouldn't retreat so easily. The full force of their wrath was coming, and Velka wasn't sure if they were ready to face it.